Hello and welcome to this premium episode number 356. I am Cornelius Fichtner. Premium means that this interview is reserved for you, our premium subscribers. Thank you very much for being here and for supporting the podcast. In many organizations, there is a familiar gap between what should get done and what does get done. This gap is commonly referred to as the execution gap, and it represents an organizational leadership issue that is difficult to overcome. In his article, Mind the Strategic Execution Gap, Paul Williams argues that we also have an innovation gap as well as a gap in strategy execution. The strategic execution gap is most often a result from a lack of focus and action between the strategic direction of the organization and the frenetic attempt to balance keeping the lights on and keeping the customers happy. In our interview, Paul defines the problem and we learn a lot about these various gaps, how they come to be and how they represent a problem to our organizations. But of course, we also discuss how project management fits into all of this and how we project managers can help overcome the issues. So mind the gap, please. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Paul R. Williams, PMP, Executive Managing Partner of Think for a Change, LLC.
Hello, Paul. Welcome back to the Project Management Podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me back. It's a great opportunity, so I appreciate it.
Yeah. So first off, let me ask you this. Up to now, I always said that we project managers and project leaders, we make things happen. Our company has a strategy, for example, increase market share or something like that. And then we are the ones that lead the projects to turn this vision into reality. Does this still hold true today?
Well, let me first tell you that I 100% agree with your line of thinking. And
Okay.
In fact, whenever I have the opportunity to speak at conferences or interviews, I always try to remind project management professionals that without them, or without our methodology or our processes and tools, the world would descend into chaos. While we're frequently the butt of a lot of jokes about being hyper-organized and control freaks, and the truth of the matter is that project managers and leaders actually make things happen. And we're the drivers behind the plan. While business journals love to go on and on about the entrepreneurial CEOs and their breakthrough ideas, the fact is that a very smart project team led by a project manager was the true impetus behind, the actual delivery or execution of those clever ideas. And that is a key distinction that gets overlooked a lot of times. People just see the cool, shiny ideas, but they miss the whole hardworking, sweaty back end of innovation kind of thing. The hard work that actually makes the actual product at the end of the day. So I'm right with you on that one.
All right. The reason why I ask you this is because our first interview that we did was based on an article that you wrote, and we are going to be talking about another article that you wrote right now. And that article is Mind the Strategic Execution Gap. And I just wanted to make sure that, we're still talking about the same kind of general principles here. But before we can really delve into this strategic execution gap, we have to define two other terms, and that is the execution gap and the innovation gap. So what are they? What is the execution gap?
Yeah, so the execution gap, my definition is that it's the difference between what the organization should get done based on its strategy and what actually does get done based on what projects are actually funded and executed. And then the innovation gap, that's a little more specific regarding strategic intent or the desire for more breakthrough thinking and innovative new products espoused by senior leadership compared to the safe, incremental product extension type stuff that actually gets built and delivered by middle management type folks in the front line, or what I call the dumbing down smart strategies approach.
All right, so much for the execution gap and innovation gap. Generally, a strategy is devised at the top and then handed down to the divisions to implement. Where then does the strategic execution gap happen?
Yeah, so unfortunately, once a strategic mandate starts to cascade down the management chain, it gets diluted essentially to minimize what I call organizational change panic, or it's force fit into an existing operational behavior rather than creating a new org structure or operational process around it. It's these adjustments, innocent as they may seem, they're almost unconsciously initiated via what I call an organizational change antibody reflex. I mean, nobody in an organization likes change, and when something new and shiny comes rolling down, there is an almost knee-jerk unconscious reaction to it, and it's hardly ever positive. And what happens with this change panic is there's this desire to do something new and something great, and what results is something more incremental rather than breakthrough, and ideas and solutions come nowhere close to matching the original mandate as directed by the executive leadership team. So this is where the gap exists, and this is partially the reason why it happens.
I have a quote for you from the Harvard Business Review. It says, companies typically realize only about 60% of their strategy's potential value because of breakdowns in planning and execution. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. And that quote tells me that organizations need to do a lot better job focusing on and investing in strategic execution and project management discipline. Both of those were created to solve the exact problem stated in that quote. But yet short-sightedness and fiscal prioritization and ineffective management approaches cause us to fall short. Planning and execution are two key components of the project management lifecycle, and it takes true leadership and dedication from the top to make sure that an organization's focus is in the right place, and that the skill set exists to move the needle on that statistic.
You said it takes leadership and dedication. So is the problem simply that we have busy executives and senior leaders focused on their own priorities, and they don't take the time to verify that their strategic direction is in fact being followed until it's far too late in the process?
Yeah, that's certainly part of the problem. Too many executives and senior leaderships, they look ahead to the next thing rather than, taking the time to verify that their strategic direction is being followed. Until it's really far too late in the process. I mean, by the time senior leadership figures out there's a gap, their typical reaction is, at least something happened. At least some action was better than no action. And so, okay, well, I mean, I maybe didn't get my original bold strategic vision, but at least I got something, and that something is almost always something safe and something completely ineffectual.
So if strategic innovation and the execution of that strategy is so important, why then does innovation fail to take hold in organizations?
Yeah, that is the ultimate question on this topic. I think, when people ask me that question about why does innovation fail to take hold, because it is so common. I'm always reminded of a famous quote from Helmut von Moltke, who was a Prussian field marshal back in the late 1800s, who said, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm probably not going to get this perfect, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
I've heard that.
I don't know. There just seems to be some combination of a disinterested apathy or an outright rebellion against change, or I don't know, maybe it's the grind of day-to-day firefighting. It's all too easy to talk about innovation, and it's so much more difficult to actually do the work that's necessary to make it happen. And I can tell you, I have worked with a lot of organizations who have put in the time, who made it innovation a business discipline, not just a flavor of the month thing or a strategic offsite, who can tell you how much of a difference that makes. And I think once you're able to get over that organizational inertia, I think then it becomes a lot easier. But it's difficult. It's one of those things that's just easy to let go of when times get tough.
The American Institute for Innovation Excellence, they say that there are in fact two gaps, the idea gap and the execution gap. Can you define those two for us, please?
Yeah, the idea gap, that's the gap where ideas, conceived and developed by frontline employee type folks and honestly, where the vast majority of customer-facing interaction occurs, are most frequently lost as they move up that chain of command through that middle or operational management layer. It's this, essentially the frontline folks will talk to customers, get some good ideas, they'll pass them up the line, and there's this foggy area in the middle layers of the organization where those ideas kind of get lost, dropped, shelved, sent to committee to die, whatever you want. And then there's this execution gap, and that gap is essentially between that weird nebulous middle part of the organization again and the executive leadership, and that really results from things like weak leadership, ineffective performance, or poor reward mechanisms, poor communication. Again, you talk to a lot of C-level type folks, and they verbally espouse a desire to be innovative, to do what it takes to innovate. They'll even come up with some strategic level things that you would normally think force the organization to start walking down a path of innovation. And as it kind of falls back down through the organization to get cascaded, again, it falls into that middle where it's watered down. And so, it's that middle part that seems to maybe play a role here.
So we've got the customers who tell the frontline people, this is what we really need. Then it goes into the organization and kind of dies in middle management and never really gets up to the higher level. Why is that? I mean, are we just blaming middle management here to have a scapegoat, or is this really what's going on?
No, I mean, it just seems to happen there. I don't know that they're consciously. Some of them may. Some of it may be outright obfuscation, but honestly, it's probably, there may be a lack of a process to doing something with, that as a manager, I get this idea. I have nowhere to go. I don't know who to talk to about this moving it up the ladder. So I may just sit on it and I forget about it, or I'm overcommitted. Everything's on fire. I'm firefighting. I'm so busy trying to keep the lights on that I don't have time to deal with new things. I've got overcommitted, fractionalized resources. I don't even think I have the permission to be innovative or to do anything with the ideas. So I think a lot of them are quite innocent. But again, it's essentially, as things start to move up, people just either don't know what to do with or just don't care enough to do anything with some of those ideas.
What can leadership do in order to overcome this?
There's different reasons for why these things all happen, and each reason, quite frankly, is difficult to kind of develop its own process around it. But if you don't link things like strategy and operations, or you don't link performance goals to strategy or innovation, if you fail to have a common language or understanding around what innovation even means for an organization, in my mind, there's no one stock definition of what innovation is. It really means something different to each organization that wants to bring it to bear. So not having common language or even understanding what the company's trying to get after is a problem. And then there's just flat out lack of accountability or metrics or even a way to measure what it is they're trying to get after. So those are some of the reasons where you struggle to get those gaps closed.
Mm-hmm. Some people say that the problem really is that day-to-day operations are always more important than driving strategic initiatives forward. Might a solution be a separation of the day-to-day operations and product ownership, so that if you hear something from the front, don't give it to the operations people because they'll lose it. Give it to the product owner so that the person who's responsible for innovating this product going forward can actually take it from here. Might that be an approach?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things, especially from an organization that is product development driven. That is probably the best way to do that, is to connect it to directly. Again, in what you've basically defined there is a process then of where, when ideas bubble up, there is an understanding of what to do with them. It's always about what is that next step. Offering that training on what is our organizational process of how we move ideas through, understanding that I may be incentivized to actually do something like that. Holding the middle type folks accountable for, and that can include a punishment for nonconformance to making sure that whatever process we've established is followed. Those are all things that definitely help drive us, but having either an organizational structure or an organizational process in place that provides that next step is critical.
Yeah, and from personal experience, I can tell you that money actually doesn't help. We're a small company and we have an idea development process that we have clearly specified in our policies. And we're paying good money if somebody in the company has a good idea and brings something that we can actually turn into a product or improve a product and bring it forward. We get very few ideas from the people working in our back office. And they meet the customers, so to speak, on a daily basis through support. Very few people in the organization actually take what they hear and turn it into, wow, the customers really want this. We should do something with it, and you'll get a bonus for doing that. Just basically for doing your job and turning around, going, this might be a good idea, and putting it into the idea process. So it seems like money doesn't help.
No, and honestly, in the hierarchy of the rewards, that would be the last one I would use. The one thing that I have seen as to be the most effective reward to an idea generator is the simple knowledge and understanding that you are doing something with their idea. If they give you an idea and you don't just simply ignore it, if you even if you say, look, we don't have time, or this doesn't quite align with where we're headed right now, but I'm going to hold on to this. If you explain to them what the next step for their idea is, that, to me, from what I've been able to get from a lot of my engagements, is about the best reward an idea generator can get, because they know that their voice has at least been heard, and they know that there is a next step for it, even if it's to put it on hold or trash it, but they know that what they contributed mattered and that it was heard.
Mm-hmm. I have another quote from you, this time from Forbes magazine. I think this is pretty much a recap of what we talked about and heard, but here it goes. The quote is, 82% of Fortune 500 CEOs feel that their organization did an effective job of strategic planning. However, only 14 of those same CEOs indicated that their organization did an effective job of implementing the strategy. Now, implementation of the strategy, that's where we project managers come in. Are we failing?
I don't know that we're failing. Some days it does seem that the root cause of these gaps results from a lack of clarity or action between strategic direction or this seemingly frenetic attempt to keep the lights on and keep the shareholders happy every quarter. But I think it's a pretty common refrain in most organizations. So I think companies really need to set priorities with respect to executing upon their strategy, and that starts at the top. And it's far too easy for senior and executive leaders to complain about strategy implementation when they're really the key for actually making that happen and consistently. And so if they don't dedicate resources and time and attention to improving and making it better, it's hard for me to listen to their complaints when they're the sort of the key driver on making that improve.
All right. I think we've defined the problem well enough this far. I think everyone's now depressed as well. Let me ask you this. How does project management fit into all of this? Because some of these things, they happen very early on. I mean, idea generation at the very front with the customer. It takes months, years until these ideas finally come to us as projects to put into action. Where do we fit into this?
Yeah, and we talked about it right at the beginning of the interview. I mean, again, if you want to make things happen or get things done, especially in a business or operational sense, it's my firm belief that project and portfolio management approaches really should be the primary approach in the tool set. I mean, we as project managers, we bring the experience, the methodology, the processes, tools and techniques, and most importantly, I think we have a demonstrated history of results to bring to these issues of bringing something out of somebody's head and making it real. And this is what we do. It's what we as project management professionals do. And collectively, we're pretty darn good at it. And I think if we continue to you can take something as small as an idea and start to move them into categories, and those categories fall into portfolios, and the company tends to spread their bets across some of those ideas. Some of them may be safe and incremental, and you know what? That pays the bills. that keeps the lights on in the organization. Whereas, if you never take a shot at something really complex or out of this world, then you're probably not going to be the next big innovator. But if if out of your entire portfolio, you say, let's say I'm going to invest 10% of my project portfolio into some of the more breakthrough risky things, and there may not be a single idea that ever comes out of there that's worthwhile, but you may hit that one big thing. And really you've invested a little amount of your organization's investment capacity, but you're at least specifically focusing on it. And again, these are all these things that I'm talking about are all things that we as project professionals, especially those of us who work in program and at the program and portfolio level, we do this stuff every day. And so we can bring a lot of the tools that we use to this innovation and idea management discipline and help them organize and move some of the stuff through the process.
Do you have an example for us, seeing this in action? I mean, how have you personally helped organizations use project management to address this?
The vast majority of my consulting business actually sits at what I love to refer to it as the sort of the intersection between innovation and project management. My customers, for the most part, haven't really bought into the whole innovation is the savior of my business hype. They're generally interested in how it might help, but they're also confused because, innovation, as you typically hear it defined or read about it in the hip business journals, is about this fun, freewheeling idea nirvana where staring out the window for an hour is going to solve all your problems. And they know it's not that easy, but they just don't know where to start. And they don't know that there's a method to the madness, and they're just looking for some help in taking good ideas out of someone's head and transforming it into something somebody's willing to pay for. And that's what we do at Think for a Change. I help them get comfortable with what innovation means for them specifically, and then help them build a strategy, and then essentially build from the ground up a portfolio of initiatives designed to reach that strategy. And I actually have an exercise called Place Your Bets, where I have a 2x2 grid where we start with, okay, what are some of the projects that you are either have in flight or want to work on that are sort of sustaining or maintenance type things that will keep the bills getting paid, keep the lights on? Okay, what are some that are a little bit more forward thinking, sort of your next release of your product? Okay, now let's think about something that might be a little bit kind of far out there, something that might take you beyond your normal customer base or your normal product offering. And we start to place those bets across those four quadrants and decide then, okay, how much do we as organizations want to invest in each quadrant? And that essentially builds for them a product and project development roadmap for a certain timeline. And it essentially builds itself. It's a great way to kind of break down the idea and the innovation management process into something that has a lot of project management feel to it. Once we get down to sort of specific projects that they want to run, we help them institute whatever kind of project management system they would like to use. But I like to do a stage gate system for a lot of this type stuff, or any kind of phase gating, just so you can control things. If something isn't working out like you thought, the beauty of stage gate is it gives you those places to sort of kill, slow down, correct, direction kind of thing. But again, whatever project or innovation management approach or structure they need help with, that's the kind of help that we do. And I mean, it's a fun job. Some people probably think I'm crazy, but it's what I love to do.
All right. To close out our interview, many of our listeners, they are probably not at the level where these kind of activities take place, where you really focus on strategy and portfolio. But execution is what we do. And execution, it's still important to get from the strategy, to get from the portfolio to the final implementation. So what are some of the actions that we lowly project managers at the forefront of execution can take to internally raise the profile of our projects and ensure that, we're not just overlooked, that we get the resources, that we are actually able to execute the strategy that was developed?
Yeah, that's a common issue across all of project management. It's and not just in the context of the discussion we've had. I mean, you're really talking about how
a silver bullet,
yeah,
right?
what can I do to increase the odds of my project success? And I've developed sort of a list that I kind I kind of check against across every project. So it's not a formal thing or anything. It's just sort of guiding tenets, I guess you call them. But the first one actually is do I know what done, quote unquote, done looks like when I go into a project? So what that tells me is there's a clear vision, there's a defined outcome. The sponsor, stakeholders, they know what their requirements are, at least at a level enough to know that when they see done at the end of the project, they say, yes, that's exactly what I wanted to do. If you can get as close to that as you can up front, that is immensely helpful. I think making sure that whatever project deliverables, milestones you have set up for yourself, make sure that those are continuously aligned to the organizational strategy. You have to obviously know what that strategy is first to be able to align it. So that is a step that project managers should take immediately, is to just truly understand what direction their company is going or that particular portfolio may be headed towards. And then just make sure that the work you're doing, just take a step here or there, time out, and just say, you know what, is what I'm doing still aligned with where the organization's headed? I think one of the things that's always been helpful for me, and it's kind of something that I've through my career have demanded more and more of as I've gotten probably more confident in my role, is to be very vocal about having an engaged project sponsor, and an engaged executive sponsor would be even better. And I essentially make it very clear that it is my expectation that the project will get the resources it needs to be successful. And I don't see a lot of younger PMs do that. Maybe it's just they don't feel it's their place, but you as a project manager are assigned a tough job. You have to get a bunch of cats herded, and you have to do that with very limited resources. And I like to just, the leadership of my project, I'd like to challenge them right up front and say, look, this is important enough for you to invest a significant amount of time and money in. Tell me that we're going to get the best resources that you can get, that we're going to have enough, that they'll be there when the work is there. And it really shows those leadership folks that you are an engaged partner with them in the success of this project, and that you're going to have a good professional working relationship with them from end to end. So that's really the goal that you want at the end of the day, is to be a good partner for your sponsors and to get done exactly what it is they want done. Hopefully they know what that is and you both come to a clear understanding. And then I think finally the last thing is communication. It's understanding specifically what kind of communication, what data points, how it looks, that project stakeholders need in order to make decisions on the project. Whether or not something's declared done, whether or not there's an issue, how that issue is going to be addressed. What is the communication plan that you've set forth, and how are you going to get that communication out there? Making sure that's all well defined up front. Those are really the sort of key things that increase your success rate.
Paul, thank you so much for your time today. This was a really interesting strategic discussion.
Yeah, thanks very much. It was a lot of fun.
And that was our strategy interview with Paul Williams. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you are a project manager who wants to become PMP or PMI ACP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcasts, the Project Management Prepcast and the Agile Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching the in-depth exam prep video training from pmprepcast.com. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. Please send your emails to info@pm-podcast.com. And when you write, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. The key to being a good project leader is keeping the people who hate you away from those who are still undecided. Until next time.